for our final recommendation. So, as I just mentioned, there's a lot of future efforts. Probably next in the queue would be looking to them to help with the vulnerable road user safety action plan. And this might tie in some research that they want to do. They had earlier proposed an IGA based solely on research. And this allows us, this subrecipient agreement allows us to engage with them in research, but also to engage with them on a host of other things. Mentioned benefit cost analysis, public outreach. They have planning students, they have media schools. There's a number of things that we may be able to, again, use. And GIS analysis, and I expect there may be some of that work done for West Route 66. So, again, what we're looking for from the board today is to authorize Kate as director to enter into this agreement. It's still under review, I believe, by NAU Legal. I think Kate has a couple of nuances that she wants to share with you before she'd be able to enter into an agreement if you so authorize. Kate?
Thanks. So related to the subrecipient tool that we just adopted, we did run NAU through the tool. And interestingly enough, they do come up as ineligible technically on the tool because one of the requirements of the 4 requirements to be eligible is that you have to have, you cannot currently be delinquent in the submission of your single audit report. NAU files their single audit report with the state of Arizona. And so NAU's pieces have been completed. However, the state of Arizona is delinquent in the filing of their single audit report. We did speak with the attorney about this as well. And he felt like this was a good example of why the board may choose to adjust eligibility if they felt like there was sufficient justification, and that it's not that NAU is really a high risk or that they're delinquent in their single audit. They're part of a much larger organization that is still pulling their audit together. And so it is a bit of a unique circumstance. So with that, though, we would want the board to intentionally make the choice to adjust that to say, while the state is behind, we're okay because NAU is not.
And otherwise they look fine.
And oh yeah, if you took that out and you made them eligible, they would be a low risk candidate.
I would think so.
Yes.
Does anybody have any questions for Kate or Dave?
No,
Patrice?
no, I don't have any questions on it. And yes, I think this is an example of where even if they don't meet the qualifications of the tool, there certainly are justifications to proceed with this.
So would you like to make a motion?
I would be happy to make a motion.
Please.
Before you do so, do we need, a finding that NAU is eligible, or a statement, or do the minutes reflect that? I mean, what are you looking for, Kate?
I think the minutes reflecting it, I think that we can save that to file.
Okay.
Yeah.
Simply by saying it's as she stated, it's even though they did not meet all aspects, this would not be a reason not to proceed.
Okay.
I think that's probably better. I'll go ahead and change the motion a little bit just to make it a little bit clearer. So yes, I would agree that even though they don't meet the qualifications pursuant to our what are we calling it? Our performance indicators, there is reason to proceed with this. And I would make a motion to delegate authority to the executive director to enter into the subrecipient agreement with Northern Arizona University.
Thank you. Did we get a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Popular one.
Tony.
Tony.
Me first.
Yeah, Tony gets it. He won the prize.
You want it?
Yeah. Any additional questions or comments? Last. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion passes unanimously. Our next item is C. Kate Morley is going to talk about legislative agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is another action item to consider a legislative agenda. So why should we set a legislative agenda? It helps keep us focused. We are trying to be proactive about securing funding for specific transportation projects and the more clear and coordinated in the messaging between agencies that we can be, the more effective we will be at the Capitol. And therefore trying to achieve results. And there's a number of legislative activities that MetroPlan does. We seek funding, we do sometimes issue letters or resolutions, and we often communicate with decision makers around policy or funding initiatives. So we have two sets of priorities here. One is a set of state priorities and one is a set of federal priorities, and I did just put them up on the screen. I don't expect you to read through them. But the first one is essentially advocating for some increased flexibility in the Arizona Smart Fund. So right now, the language, this was a bill that was drafted very quickly. The language isn't very clear in that it says any entity subdivision of the state is eligible, but then they have pots of money that don't include all subdivisions of the state. And so they have interpreted this to mean that transit agencies and tribes aren't necessarily a subrecipient of the state, but metropolitan planning organizations who are all eligible for federal grants cannot access the SMART Fund, and the SMART Fund is intended to draw down federal grants. So we would like to see them expand the eligibility very clearly, so that way these other entities have access to the SMART Fund. It's matching funds for federal grants from the state of Arizona. We also want to see them increase the level of funding in the program, with particular focus on cities over 10,000. And that's not because we don't care about Coconino County, it's because there's still lots of money in the county pot, but the city pot has been oversubscribed for several months. And so if there's a limited amount of money, we'd really like to see it basically reopen the pot of money in the cities over 10,000 category. The second item we have is to support the Greater Arizona Funding Initiative, or the RTAC bill. We talked about this last month and the board approved the projects that you see in front of you. We are actively working on that already. We'll be at the Rural Summit with Vice Chair Vasquez later in October to advocate for these projects. The third bullet is to seek long-term solutions for insufficient state funding. And the fourth bullet is to continue essentially to work with ADOT to prioritize state highway projects within the region. So these might be lighting upgrades to comply with dark sky. They are the jurisdictional owner of many roads within the city and within the county. So working for improvements to the ADOT-owned highway system within the MPO area is the fourth bullet. I did receive a comment on this from Heather Domlin with Mountain Line this morning. She apologized for being late. They just developed their priorities. And after talking with her, I would also recommend we add two more to this state list. The first one being increasing state funding. Well, I guess this is kind of covered in the third bullet, but specifically to include transit. Increasing state funding for transit, which the state currently does not put money towards. And then the an extra bullet that is charging rates for transits. This is related to Mountain Line's transition to electric buses. And the Arizona Corporation Commission sets rate structures. And the way the buses charge, they all charge at the same time. And Mountain Line gets hit with very high demand fees, or will once they have a large fleet. And so they would like to see opportunity for flexibility in the way transit is charged, demand fees particularly, as a way to bring down operating costs. Moving on to federal priorities, we have a number here too. The first one is really to support the reauthorization of the IIJA. That is a conversation that you're starting to see pick up across the country. It expires in 2 more years, I believe. The second bullet is to increase flexibility in two programs that we are eligible for. One is the carbon reduction program. It is how we intended to fund the transportation demand management planner. And FHWA has said we can hire a consultant to do that work, but we can't hire a staff person to do that work. So we'd really like to advocate that they allow more flexibility in that program. And then the transportation alternatives program is a similar program that has programmatic elements to it, where you can run into similar issues with the ability to contract versus staff directly. So the third bullet there is support the award of funding for, oh yeah, was there a question?
I think there's a call.
Got it. Support the award of funding for regional projects submitted for federal grants. So there is a political component to submitting federal grants. We have to write great grants, that's the baseline, but you also need to be out there supporting them. So we want to make sure we stay on top of that. The fourth bullet is to modernize car safety ratings to consider vulnerable users. So now when you go buy a car, when you see the safety rating, it's about the safety of the internal occupants of the vehicle. And it doesn't speak to, frankly, how deadly your vehicle is to people on the outside of the vehicle, particularly pedestrians. There is already a national effort to redo car safety ratings to consider this. It doesn't mean we would change the design. It would just mean when you see that rating, there would be a recognition of your impact on people outside the vehicle as well. So we think that would be good education and information for buyers to understand what their vehicles are capable of. The fifth bullet there is to support updates to the manual on uniform traffic control devices. These are the standard signs and lane markings you see on roadways across the US, so that the intent is that if everything looks the same, people know how to drive in all areas, right? So you're familiar with the signs, you're familiar with the yellow line means, what a broken line means. However, these manuals are large manuals. They involve a lot of federal process, and so they can be very slow to be updated. And there's also some national movement to update this particular item to be more forward focused on also bikes and pedestrians. And so if that happens at the national level, those rules flow down to us and help us achieve some of our own goals locally. And then finally, support congressionally directed spending for regional transportation projects. Our partners have not come up with their congressionally directed spending asks. That usually comes out in the spring. But if there are transportation projects in that, we want to make sure we're out there supporting them. So with those two additions that, from what I had in my report, that is.
Well, I do have one addition.
Yeah.
And just as a little background, Mayor Daggett and Miranda Sweet, council member, and myself, council member, had a meeting with Amtrak last week with two people from Amtrak, and they were telling us that the Senate is very supportive of Amtrak, wants to actually increase the funding. However, the House is being reticent, and they are wanting to dramatically cut the funding to Amtrak. Of course, this is in light of, they've already passed funding for the FAA and all of the subsidies that they give to airports. So they don't want to play fair. They want to, fully fund one mode and then cut back on another. So what I'm suggesting is that we add a bullet point that says, support funding for long distance Amtrak routes. And, everybody knows Amtrak is out there, but what's really surprising to me is when I saw some numbers of how many people get on and off Amtrak in Flagstaff. It's very significant. So that's my suggestion. All right, let's open it up to further discussion. Does anybody else have any comments about any of these bullet points or want to add any more? Please speak up. I'm not seeing hands incidentally, so we'll just have to speak up. Don't be shy, we're friends. Well, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve the, I'm looking at the wrong page here. The legislative agenda with the 3 additions that Kate Morley and I brought up. Can I get a second, and then we can have discussion?
Second.
Machine Schwartzman, second, thank you. All right, any further discussion on the proposal? Adds, deletes, comments? Okay. all those-
Chair,
Yes,
Chairman,
yes,
this is
go ahead.
Casey Thompson, State Board Member. You all realize that we have a very limited dollars in each of the 5 categories that have been identified to be receiving the smart dollars. This year, we were lucky during Ducey's administration. They appropriated $10 million to distribute among the 5 categories. This year, I believe it's something like $2,500,000 per category. Now, next year, I don't know how this is going to be, but I do appreciate the fact that what I'm reading here is that there's going to be effort to push for continued funding of the SMART funds. So I do realize that, yes, we do have limited funds, and it's really coming down pretty quickly. But I do appreciate the fact that I think it's going to really depend on how much we communicate to the legislature on how successful we have been or we are in utilizing the SMART funding. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Any other comments regarding? All right, we have a motion on the table. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? That motion passes without dissent.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
in a semi-related arena, since you mentioned Amtrak and support for Amtrak as an addition, I met Todd Liebman of All Aboard Arizona,
Yes.
and he mentioned there's a conference coming up on November 4th.
That's right.
So just wanted to bring that to the board's attention, and I'm sure to tie it back to the agenda, that will be a topic at that conference.
Definitely. Well, I have attended one of those meetings when I was down in Tucson, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And it's a good organization advocating for rail. There's a lot of talk about rail between Tucson and Phoenix. And when you talk to Amtrak, they were saying, well, if that comes in, then maybe the next step will be between Flag and Phoenix. It won't be a real direct route because I don't think I-17 corridors lends itself to railroad tracks. But there's other ideas out towards, there are tracks that go that out towards the west. All right, yeah, if anybody wants information on that, I could probably provide that, or Dave can. All right, let's move on. Kate Morley is going to talk about mission, vision, and values, and what we're proposing to do there.
Great.
And why? Why would we do this?
So I apologize, my slide here is not correct. This is agendized as something the board can take action on if they choose to take action on today. Though there is no urgency around it if the board is not prepared to do that today. So a little history about our current mission and visions. It was adopted in 2017 and it remained in place through the transition to independence. It's to create the finest transportation system in the country, and the mission is to leverage cooperation to maximize financial and political resources for a premier transportation system. So why consider a new mission vision? In many discussions with partners, agencies, and the public, people haven't been very clear on exactly what Metro Plan is and should be doing. And so the potential is here to update the mission in a way that is very clear to the public and partners about who we are and what we do. For several years, the strategic plan also identified an activity to define what the finest transportation system is. And so we have an opportunity to do that through a new mission and vision, and also to help us get clear on the values of our transportation system and what we're trying to create. And that will help us in setting priorities for grants in our strategic grants process, in ranking projects if we know what our values are. So I have them on this, some items on the screen in front of you today. And as I said, this is not urgent. So if the board doesn't like the direction this is headed, that is fine feedback to give us, and we can go back and revise, or we could host a larger workshop. But we did workshop this as staff for a little while, and came up with two different options for the vision. They're very slightly different, though. Difference is actually highlighted in yellow, so it's a little bit of the structure. Do you just get right to it, or do you make it the full sentence? And then the word efficient is a change in there as well. So we started talking about all the reasons why we have a transportation system. This goes back to the advanced workshop where we did the visioning of West 66, and people sat around a map and talked about what they wanted to see on West 66, and we kept asking you the question why? Why a sidewalk? Well, the sidewalk's important for equity. A sidewalk's important for climate action. Those types of things. And so we used that information from the advance to come up with these. And it seemed like the true reason, the why of everything, was the well-being of people and the natural environment. And so that was really what was driving the creation of the vision. And so our two options are here in front of you. And I'm going to go through the mission and values so you can see them all, and then we'll come back.
And come back and do each one.
Yeah, but now you can kind of see the package first.
Thank you.
The mission, this is where we really want to describe what Metro Plan is doing about creating that vision of our world. We came up with 4 different options on this, and just to mix your brains up a little bit, this time instead of highlighting the differences between them, in yellow is highlighted the commonalities. And so we really talked about what are our core activities, and we decided it was really prioritizing projects, be that through grants or TIP amendments or historic work with taxes like 419. It's doing planning work. It's pursuing funding. So we didn't just want to connect people to funding, but we wanted to actively pursue funding. And then this mode choice programs, which gets to the work of the Transportation Demand Management Planner or program that we still intend to pursue. So those were the 4 main activities that we felt like were important. And then we had a variety of different ways of expressing that. I highlighted the mode choice programs in green because there was some thought that in the third one in particular that it was already included the way it was stated, and so to clean up that sentence, it was removed from number 4. So it's meant to be there, but it's not as directly stated in number 4. So that's what drove the creation of our missions, were those 4 activities. Again, trying to get really clear to our partners and the public about what is it Metro Plan does. And then we created transportation values, and these are new. And this goes back to those whys, and these come straight from the advance. What were the things we heard? And the differences between these two are highlighted. So if they're not highlighted, they're in both lists, or there's a slight tweak if they're in yellow on list 2. So I'll give you a moment to look these over so I don't just read to you. But this would help us with that priority setting if we know what the values are. So we could look at several different projects and say, you know, which ones really are higher priority, or which one helps us meet our values better. That would be a driving factor. So with that, I'm gonna, hopefully you have a moment to soak those in. I'm gonna go back to vision now that you've kind of seen the package, and we can just have open discussion. We should have a good 20 minutes if we want to spend that long on this one.
I will mention that I had a meeting with Jeff Bauman and Michelle McNulty, engineering and planning at the city. And they made a few suggestions. On this one right here, they wanted to add the word and built environment. But I don't know that we need that, because I'll note that we put that built environment in values, so we probably don't need it all over the place. I mean, I guess McNulty's point was that, yes, we want to protect the Ponderosa Pines as much as we can, but we don't want to put a freeway through downtown, because downtown has character and we need to respect that. So, comments, which of these do people like? I guess I like the our vision is to be added, so it isn't just like a half sentence when, because if you don't add it into it itself, when somebody refers to it, they would have to say that anyway. Our vision is our region, blah, blah. All right, let's open it up. Any comments by anybody?
You know, I agree with you in terms of the vision statement there. I don't think if you do a vision statement, you don't want to start with our vision is that the region, just do that at the top. I agree with that, the comment that Jim made. And I want to kind of think about this a little bit more. I think in general, my initial comments would be a positive about the vision on the vision statements. And I'd love to hear what other people have to say about it as well. The mission, again, I'd like to kind of take a closer look at it, but I think it looks good. Transportation values, in general, I think it all looks really good, and it's a great proposal for us to kind of chew over, and I'd like to hear other people's thoughts on it as well.
Yeah, I just want to make one clarification. I think Chair McCarthy was saying he likes it starting with the full sentence, and Member Horstman, I think you were saying you like it when it's kind of the word vision is above it, and then it just starts into the outreach and destroying. So
That's
kind of
what
like
I'd
on
like
the
to
left
see.
with Mountain Line.
Yeah,
When it's
that's what I'd like to see.
Well, I get your point. In other words, if you have a heading that says our vision, then you
Yes.
can just list it and it's redundant to say our vision is.
That's right.
I'm fine with that. So in effect, what you're saying is you agree with two, but the word our vision can just be used as a heading.
That's correct.
So heading would be our vision, colon, and then start with the region will be joined. Is that your
Yes,
suggestion?
that's what I would do. Yes, that would be my suggestion.
I'm comfortable with that. Other comments? If not, let's move on to mission. And Kate, you're taking notes on this?
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you.
So is Karen.
Yeah. I might add that the city people wanted to add the word comprehensive planning. And Kate and I talked about, well, comprehensive planning has a very specific meaning, and so it would be inappropriate to use it in this context. So I'm just saying that for the sake of the city. I guess the difference between 3 and 4 is we've deleted for all transportation modes. Because it's already covered in the last part of the sentence, is that right?
You deleted mode choice programs
Okay,
because you felt like it was covered in facilitating transportation programs. But
so I guess my preference is number 4, is that consistent with what we said before? So my proposal is we go with number 4, and as Ms. Horstman pointed out, if we're gonna put it on a chart or something, we can say the mission colon, and then just start with Metro Plan. I guess it would have to change a little. Metro Plan will facilitate.
Or to facilitate.
Well, I guess you can say the mission colon to facilitate, okay. Which
Yeah,
is got a couple words. And I'm
I
okay
agree with that, Jim.
Yeah, the mission colon to facilitate blah, blah, blah. Any other comments?
Chair McCarthy,
Please.
I just, I kind of like the word, but I don't know if it adds value to the statement. And that's the word enthusiastic. What is the difference between enthusiastic pursuit of funding and pursuit of funding? I would hope that whatever funding we pursue is enthusiastically.
I think the different, and number 2 is our pared down version where we took out some of the extra adjectives that we were trying to, I think it was really just a sentiment of like more flair or less flair in the mission. And I do think that gets back to some of the question of, is it clear? Our purpose is to be clear about what we do. So, going back to like, what's the most clear about what we do, while still being inspiring.
I appreciate your comments, Kate. My only concern is that, and this happens in my own organization, and probably everybody else's too, the challenge with both a mission and a vision statement is that who remembers them, and the key sometimes is that the shorter it is, the better it sticks, and so that's kind of why I sort of am questioning the use of the word enthusiastic. Like I said, I like it. It sort of makes it flary and exciting, but at the same time, I don't know whether is it something enthusiastic is something we're going to measure, and if there is a difference between that and just normal pursuit of funding, it would be good to know what that actually means.
Good point.
I don't think that's something we actually thought about defining.
The level of enthusiasm. It's a good point.
Well, that's a good point. Other comments? What's the consensus of the board? Take out the word enthusiastic?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary either.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
If you're looking, if I might say something, I think you remove the word enthusiastic, and I think you're okay if you just say the pursuit of funding. But if you did want to add something there, maybe strategic pursuit of funding or focused pursuit of funding, if there's the feeling that there's a little more emphasis needed on the fact that we're actively looking for funding. Thank you.
Great.
So what about adding the word strategic? What are people's thoughts? Editing by committee.
Mr. Chair, I'll just say that, some of the efforts we're pursuing are just that, strategic pursuit of funding. And so having that as part of our mission, I think makes that, I actually think that does give us some direction, where it's not like every opportunity that comes up, we're going this way and that way and the other way. Every time there's money.
What's the word you're thinking?
So I think strategic pursuit of funding
Strategic, okay.
gives us direction to say, no, we need to be very thoughtful and.
So do we have consensus on adding the word strategic pursuit of funding? So where are we with number 4, with the take out enthusiastic, add strategic, and then with the understanding that if we put it on the board, it'll say the mission and then to facilitate.
So you're going to remove the enthusiastic, so it stays in, just to confirm, in the same vein as to, because you don't have.
Just replace enthusiastic with strategic.
Okay.
Yeah, Just one word. All right, any more comments on that?
So we're just to read it. So to facilitate multimodal transportation improvements and programs for all transportation modes.
Which one are you reading?
Number 4.
Okay,
So yeah, to facilitate multimodal transportation improvements and programs for all transportation modes through collaborative priority setting, planning, and the strategic pursuit of funding.
And take out the strategic if you want to keep it in the same. Okay.
okay. So we'll move on to what our values are. What are your values, Kate?
I have many values when it comes to transportation. They're up on the screen. I think, so we sent out option 1 in the packet, and option 2 was feedback from city staff again.
Well, I think the first one is to a lot of people in the public vision 0. What's that mean? You know, so we just changed that to 0 deaths and serious injuries. That anyone could understand.
Mhm.
And then the other comment of the city was that public support should not be listed last, it should be near the top. And these aren't necessarily in order by any means, but I was fine with moving public support up to number 2. And then stewardship of the natural and built environment. You know, some of the staff people really wanted the word, you know, stewardship of the built environment, which is kind of community character. So I guess the proposal is to go with option 2, but we can edit like we've done on some of these other things. So comments by the board members, please don't be shy. I'm not hearing anything. Does that mean people like option 2?
Yeah, I think we're looking at it, reviewed it, I like option 2 over option 1. I think it just does a better job of kind of sharing what we're looking at or what we're trying to share with our community.
Okay. All right, we could adopt these today, or we could sit on them for a month and, you know, bring it back next time. I mean, I'm okay with adopting it right now. It sounds like we've kind of gone over the 3 things individually. So, you know, by the 3 things, I mean vision, mission, and values. So.
Yeah, as I said, there's no rush. I think we have clear direction. We could do it today, or if the board prefers that they can just see the final cleaned up versions, we could bring back that so that everyone sees it clearly in
One last
time.
Thoughts of the board? Well, if somebody wants to make a motion, we'll approve it right now. If not, we'll just bring it back next month. I'm okay either way. I'm not hearing any motions, so Kate, why don't you bring this back to us next time, all cleaned up?
Okay.
And then we can either formally approve with them, or we can make some minor edits at that point.
Okay.
That makes sense to you?
Yeah.
Good.
So table until next month.
Yeah, well, I think the minutes should reflect that we had a enthusiastic discussion and tentatively agreed on the wording, but we're going to bring it back next month, which in effect is tabling till the next meeting. Okay? Yeah, with that? Okay, let's move on to the fiscal year 23 year-end financial report. And Kate, why don't you do this one?
Thank you.
That is what the agenda says.
That is, and I'm prepared. This is not an action item. This is our annual end of year financial report closing out FY 23. Up on the screen in front of you, you can see the FY 23 amended budget and then the FY 23 actuals. And what you'll notice on this slide is we had predicted quite a bit more revenue, but also quite a bit more expenditure. And that's because our revenue is reimbursement based. So if we don't expend, then we don't receive that revenue. And so that is why both categories are very low. That revenue still exists. We can just carry it forward into future years. And so we haven't lost the opportunity to spend those funds. We just haven't not done it yet. So why so under budget? A couple reasons. So in the salaries and employee related expenses category, the savings are due to the vacant transportation demand management planner in large part. That position was anticipated to be brought on last December, and then it was never filled for some of the reasons that we've discussed. So that's the big savings in that category. Under operating, we were actually very close to what we predicted in the operating category, and it's largely due to our savings in rent. So we moved into Mountain Line in December, saving about $12,000 for half of the year. So it was a $24,000 year lease. We saved $12,000, and that's where you see a lot of the savings in operating. So that works out doubly well for MetroPlan because we take the rent that Mountain Line does not charge us, and we use it as in-kind for grants. So not only do we not spend cash, we also get more in-kind. Travel, we did not spend, I can go back to the other slide since it doesn't even show on that bar chart. We did not spend very much in travel. We spent just over $5,000. That's also largely due to turnover in the organization, so there wasn't as much travel occurring as that turnover occurred. And then I do expect that travel will return to normal this year. We've already been to multiple conferences this fiscal year and have good feedback on that. Finally, our largest category is projects, and this is where you see there's that huge savings from what we had projected. And this is really due to multiple projects that were budgeted to take place in FY23. Yet the full expense didn't occur there, or we didn't start spending on consultants in that year. So for example, we put the whole $450,000 for the downtown mile into FY23. That is our subrecipient agreement with the city of Flagstaff. They didn't start billing us until the very end of the fiscal year. So we barely spent any money on downtown mile. We will just carry that into this fiscal year, and that is in the budget. The same with West 66. We thought we would hire consultants. We've now decided to do that in-house. So you're not seeing the expenses that we thought. So there's good reason. And as I said, these projects are still moving forward and we still have access to the funds. We're just trying to be smart about how we spend them on projects. And that's my summary of the fiscal year. There are not many categories in the MetroPlan budget and not many expenses either. So it's a pretty fast report. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Kate. Does anyone have questions or comments?
No, I think it speaks for itself.
Okay, well, thank you. Let's move on to strategic grant process. And Dave and Sandra are going to speak to this. This is just information, discussion, no action.
Thank you, Chair McCarthy. So this is coming from our strategic advance that we had in May, and Vice Chair Vasquez just mentioned adding strategic to grant seeking. So this is very much in alignment with that. So coming out of the strategic advance, we have two objectives: to align our capital and programmatic needs with priorities and fund sources, and expand our match and revenue generating options. As you know, the bipartisan infrastructure law, the IIJA, really increased federal transportation dollars by quite a bit. And so we would like to devise a strategy on how to best draw down those dollars. Oopsie, I'm like playing with two mouses, mice. Okay, so we want to make a paradigm shift here. We want to shift from reactive to proactive fund seeking. So we want to expand our strategy through fund seeking, our legislative effort that Kate just mentioned and with the legislative agenda. We want to streamline the coordination of our stakeholders. And, you know, this whole process kind of legitimizes the purpose of an MPO is to wrangle all of our partners and align and really be smart about the projects and the funds that we focus on. And then if we are coordinating nicely, then we're demonstrating a tangible evidence of a shared vision. And who doesn't love that? Sorry. Maybe I should just, okay. Okay, so here is my here's how I'm planning to approach devising the strategic fund seeking process. So before I get into that, I need some things from our member organizations. I need a list. I've already started reaching out to some of our stakeholders about giving me a list of all unfunded and funded transportation projects. We have our TIP, but that is limited and we really want to cast a wide net in terms of what projects are out there so we can look for strategy and alignment. And also I'm going to be reaching out to key people to have stakeholder interviews to help inform this process. So the first box here is I want to collect all the info. I want to cast a wide net of my unfunded and unfunded projects in the region, not mine, the projects in the region that are funded and unfunded. I want to meet with people to really go on a listening tour to get ideas from y'all about what would make a great process for you, what works for you, what doesn't, and then analyze that data to come up with some processes that benefit all of our partners in our region. So the next step, the second phase to that is really scoring adoption and engagement. So Dave and I recently came back from the AMPO conference. And so what I've been hearing from FHWA officials and FHWA officials, not only at the conference, but in webinars and things of that nature, is they really want to see skin in the game, right? They really want to see an illustration of collaboration in fund seeking. So when we're analyzing our projects and priorities, where is there potential to really collaborate? The second one is match. You know, there matches between 5.7 and 20%. And do we have match? Project readiness is a huge one. How ready are we to deliver the project, or our project sponsor? How ready are they? Is the scope in alignment with the readiness? Is the scope in alignment with the timeline? Is there a vision and political overlay? As Kate mentioned earlier in this conversation, in this meeting, seeking federal grants does have a very significant political component to it. The second box is creating and finalizing the process to present to the board and the TAC for adoption, and then rolling that out to our partners. So the future process will look like this, and it's blank because it doesn't exist yet, because you're all going to help me fashion it. And then after it's been devised, then we'll kick it off, right? So we've come up with I've done the stakeholder meetings, I've gathered the information, I've come up with the process, we've rolled it out to our partners. Now we're ready to write grants, right? So we want to kick things off. Something I learned helping with the PROTECT grant with the flood control district in Coconino County is to connect subject matter experts early, right? So the folks in charge of the benefit cost analysis, the hydrologists, the engineers, whoever are the subject matter experts that will help us write a strong application, connecting them early and deciding who is doing what, deciding the application roles, who is writing the narrative and the pieces of the narrative, who's making the budget and things of that nature up front, so that we can have an orchestrated and organized process moving forward. So continuous engagement with these different stakeholder groups, the subject matter experts, the visionaries, the politicians, et cetera, our lobbyists and things of that nature, unto submission. So that is my proposed process, and I am ready to take questions or comments.
Any comments by board members or staff? Okay.
Yeah, I will just add, I'm very excited about this process and getting it done. It all is in the very easy stage where we can talk about how great it will be. However, I will say I think there will be challenging stages for the board where we are looking at ranking projects, and it could be we want to apply for a raised grant, and the county has one, and the city has one, and Mountain Line has one, and difficult conversations and setting those priorities. But that is part of the strategy of being good grant seekers and not competing against each other. So we're setting the stage for those future harder conversations.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, because one of the objectives of devising this project is to really scrutinize and limit competition, right? We really want to make sure all of our partners are in alignment and that we're applying for funds and getting them and not competing and demonstrating collaboration and skin in the game, because that is the number one thing that FHWA really wants to look for is collaboration and also merit criteria, right? Justice, equity, climate, disadvantaged areas and things of that, those kinds of elements. Anything else? Any
comments from the board members? All right. Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We'll move on to key performance indicators. Kate, you're going to talk about this.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. So background on the key performance indicators, these are new. We adopted them on June 1st as a part of our new strategic plan. And our goal is to be able to show progress over time on reaching our strategic plan goals and objectives. This is the very first quarter that we're presenting to you. And so while we hope to move towards trends over time in charts and graphic formats, we don't have trends yet. And so it's in much more narrative format. But we're open to feedback of the board as well in terms of how you'd like to see things as we move towards the more visual format in the future. So one of the charts we have started keeping track of is related to goal 1, which was maximize funding. And objectives 1 and 2, the objectives 1 through 4 on the left-hand side, objectives 1 and 2 are about the number of opportunities sought and amount of funding obtained. And so the chart on the right is representative of that. The blue chart represents, and I should say it's fourth quarter of FY23, total amount of funding pursued. And then the orange bar is how much we've received. And then the numbers 6, 4, and up in the right-hand corner, 10, those are the number of opportunities we have sought. So in FY23, there were 6 different grants, and 4 in FY24 so far. So we're very proud of the work we've done so far. In the end of last year and the beginning of this year, we've spent a lot of time doing grant writing. One piece of feedback from management committee on this particular chart is we focused on the work Metro Plan was doing to bring funding in. But the management committee would also like to see a bigger regional perspective. So for example, the city submitted a raise grant that all Metro Plan did for that was write a concurrence letter. It was very low level of effort. So it's not actually reflected in this chart because we didn't do heavy lifting. Management committee suggested we show all of it so that you get the full regional perspective. Number 3 is develop annual legislative agenda and work plan. And the board just adopted a legislative agenda, so we can check that one off the box. And then the 4th one was clean audits and reviews. This allows us to continue to be successful in grant seeking. And we are currently in progress on 2 audits. Our first ever audit from ADOT and our annual single audit for FY23 has kicked off. And so we're working through those processes right now. Any questions? I'll pause on each of the goals. Any questions on key performance indicators for goal 1? All right. Goal 2 is deliver plans that meet partner and community needs. We really wanted implementable plans. That was a key goal of ours. The key performance indicators are numbers 1 through 4 there, and then there's brief updates underneath. So we have been working really hard to involve our stakeholders in scoping process. We've spent a lot of time putting together the West 66 scope and work plan with the tax input and the development of a project advisory group so that our partners are all bought into the outcomes of that plan and that it's useful when it is done. Number 2 is participant demographics reflect community demographics. We haven't done any events or outreach this quarter to track this item. This is something that we do hope gets more robust as we get a TDM program going, the Transportation Demand Management Program going. Number 3 is the number of new data sets collected. We did conduct some robust traffic counts and heavily focused on bike and ped counts, so that's more robust than historically we've done. So thanks to Dave for leading that. And then number 4 is the number of policies, projects, or other recommendations implemented. And again, we haven't adopted anything yet to start implementing, so we didn't have any updates on this item yet. Questions on number 2? Okay. Number 3 is build our visibility in the community, and the 4 KPIs are up at the top of your screen. And this one, we have a bunch of data that drills much deeper than the 4 KPIs. And so we've presented that to you here, but if you'd rather us just distill it back up into some of those, the 4 KPIs that are above, we can do that. But we were curious if this level of info was interesting to you. So you can see we've sent out some e-newsletters and done a survey. Our website we've been working hard on driving people to our website and social media. So we have had 761 site sessions, which is good for a website like ours, I think, and an agency like ours. Then on this page, you can see our social media stats in the charts. So we compared Facebook and Instagram. We're doing both. We feel like both those platforms are important because we can see the demographics on them. And Facebook has a much older demographic than Instagram does. So we feel like we're reaching different people through those platforms. And then there's some more stats on our social media on the left side, the number of visits. We did try boosting a post for the first time, which is like a $10 commitment, and it did work. We did get, you can see there's the 1,800 reach on the left-hand column. That was because we paid $10, so we got a lot of people to see our post. So that was an interesting experiment that I think paid off. And we have 44 new followers. So that's great. Please keep tagging us in social media so that we can build that following. Any questions on visibility in the community? Okay. And then the 4th one is implement programs that encourage mode shift. This is something we've really been looking to start, that transportation demand management program, so that we have a point person who can be leading these efforts. So the first one is increase the percentage of trips made on alternative modes. And we did conduct the traffic counts, which gives us some baseline data for where we're at, though we haven't made any increases or changes in that yet, but we can track that data over time. Our second goal is a reduction in K through 12 school traffic. We did apply for the Transportation Alternatives Program through ADOT last week. Sandra got our grant application in for $1.1 million, and it's a partnership of the city, county, Mountain Line, and Metro Plan to deliver safe routes to school programs, which are design of capital projects, but also educational activities, encouragement activities. And then number 3 is the number of programs, pilots, and demonstrations conducted. And so this again is where we were hoping to have that TDM planner. We've been working with FHWA to try and figure out solutions to that. We've been developing an RFP to potentially release, and we're still finalizing a plan of action on that one. So any questions on goal 4?
So.
Great. Well, I'm open to any other feedback. Again, our goal here is to be reporting on how we're doing, reaching the goals and objectives of the strategic plan, and we plan to bring this to you quarterly.
Sounds good. Any questions on any of this from the board? Well, thank you, Kate. Good job. Glad that you're on board the ship. Next was creative local match options for transportation investment zones. And Sandra Chavez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll refresh your memory. I got hired through a 5305E grant to explore creative local match options to draw down federal dollars because of the BIL and the IIJA. One of the options is Transportation Reinvestment Zone. So this is a value capture strategy. So this is a really interesting financing mechanism that involves a little bit of a long game and a little bit of different puzzle pieces. So what is a Transportation Reinvestment Zone? So it's a contiguous area. So here's the graphic here. It's a zone that's identified by the local government that's going to spur economic development, where a portion of the future local property and or sales tax revenues gets to be used to finance a portion of the transportation part of the economic development project. So in this graphic, you have your zone, your contiguous zone that's identified that has transportation components. Then this zone generates property and sales taxes, and those taxes, those revenues are used to fund this project. And here's the visual. So something that's really interesting is that the Transportation Reinvestment Zone is contingent on having tax increment financing, which here's the graphic. So here's property tax, and here's, here is the property value. So here's tax increment base. So you come up with a baseline. So how long is this economic development zone? How long is this project going to take? And what is the baseline of tax revenue that you're gonna get from this project? So that's this bottom area here. And then the captured appraised value is your Transportation Reinvestment Zone. You're going to skim off the top of this tax increment financing to pay for your transportation project. So here is property value, and here's taxes, right? So that's kind of how the Transportation Reinvestment Zone sits on top of tax increment financing to finance the transportation component of your economic development zone. So TRZ and TIF are separate and distinct, but they are also similar, right? So if you have a Transportation Reinvestment Zone, you have to have tax increment financing to have a Transportation Reinvestment Zone. So TRZs are exclusively for transportation, and tax increment financing is larger than transportation. It's used to do like streetscaping and things that are outside of transportation, and that's how they relate. But they kind of have to be together. So why would you do this? Why? So what is the point of all of this, right? So Transportation Reinvestment Zones are useful when you want to fund a transportation project to leverage your other dollars. So if you have an economic development zone and you have transportation infrastructure included in it, and you're funding it, you're financing this whole entire project with federal and state transportation funds, right? Your formula funding, your discretionary funding, your tolls, or your taxes. You can leverage, if you designate a TRZ, you can leverage these other dollars to finance the project. And TRZs, see this puzzle piece? You have like your discretionary funding, your bonds, your taxes. It's just a piece of financing that can help you close a finance gap. And one zone can support a single or multiple project within the zone. So what's the impetus of the TRZ, right? So what if our regional partners have such a project like the J.W. Powell area or the Fort Tuthill Hospital area? what are neighboring or overlapping local governments that need to close a funding gap that will have an economic development piece to it? And how can they come together to fund this project as a collective? And what I thought the coolest thing about TRZs is when you have a region and you have an economic zone ripe for development, you can really choose, as a local body, you can choose a project that will promote equity and can kind of elevate a transportation disadvantaged area, right? And it's got a lot of skin in the game, and it's developers, it's business owners, it's property owners, and it's the people that are going to utilize that zone and generate that revenue. How do you do this, right? So initiation, so you decide that you want to do it, right? Then you anoint the zone, you name the zone. You're like, we want to do J.W. Powell, we want to do Fort Tuthill. This absolutely needs public hearing and adoption. And then you operationalize it. And the cool thing about TRZ revenue is that it's finite. It ends when the project is paid for. So what does that mean so part of the objective of me writing this Creative Local Match white paper is that each intervention can be either applied regionally or nationally. So right now, the cornerstone of a TRZ is a TIF, right? This thing, oops, what's happening here? How do I go backwards?
I can go backwards.
You go to that TIF thing? Yes. So TIF is not legal in Arizona right now. It became illegal in 1999. So what do we need if we want to do this? If we decide as a region that we want to explore this for J.W. Powell, explore this for Fort Tuthill, it does indeed need enabling legislation. It is up to local governments to advocate on the state level to reignite TIF, and it does require a vote. And so how does this work? Let's pretend this all happens and the legislation gets enabled and boom, we have a TIF. That's amazing. You have to front load it through a bond. So there is an element of risk involved in this financing structure. But the cool thing is that there's a lot of skin in the game and it helps you close funding gaps. But right now, Arizona doesn't do it. There's a silver lining. There's a town in Arizona that snuck under and got grandfathered in 1999, and that's Tucson. And that is their Rio Nuevo development district that has done amazing economic things. Governor Ducey extended its life until 2035. So there is a precedent. There is something to go on here in Arizona. And so, yeah, that's the option that I've explored this month. Does anybody have questions or comments?
So what you're saying is we need to advocate at the state to allow this again.
Correct.
I will mention that when I met with city staff earlier this week, Michelle McNulty said that the city is very supportive of this and she thinks it's got a lot of potential. Good idea.
Cool.
If I could just know, Sandra mentioned a couple projects, but didn't give specifics. So I wanted to maybe give a more detailed example. So if you look at her graphic on this slide with the blue and you see that line of a transportation project, a local example that she referenced would be, let's say, John Wesley Powell Boulevard. So there's not a lot of existing property tax revenue currently around JWP and where that would go. But what could happen is you could draw a district around it and then take, as in this slide, you anticipate new economic growth to occur and new property tax revenue to generate. So your as you said, your baseline tax in brown there stays the same, keeps going to the places it's going, but you take all that new revenue that's generated by the economic development occurs because you invested in JWP. You take that money to pay JWP off, essentially. So you need that upfront revenue that she mentioned. Does that make sense about how?
Well, we might not take all of the revenue, we might take part of the revenue.
Yes, so you have to determine those.
That makes sense to me. Does that make sense to the other board members? So does this need to be added to our legislative priorities or something we want to advocate at the state level?
I think if it's of interest to the board, I think it's a long game. So I think we can start working on it this year and then maybe next year, try to really move something forward. But I think it is a multi-year process.
As a reminder, as part of this grant, when it was applied for, was that it be applicable not just here, but to the rest of the state, and that there would be some dissemination around the state of all these creative local match options. And I think at that point in time, you know, which of these catches the interest of other regional organizations and their members, I might say, yeah, we've got some momentum or critical mass behind this issue. I'd be part of it.
So that means maybe try to get some other jurisdictions interested, and then at that point, push it with the legislation. Okay, good comment.
And right now, I guess I'll add a couple more things, is right now, the two states that use this model most heavily are Texas and Utah. In Texas, it took them about 5 years to roll this out. So, as Kate mentioned, it is a long game, but it's also affords an incredible amount of flexibility and innovation, and it's finite, and it sunsets, it's not forever.
It's interesting that the two states that do it are conservative states,
Isn't it?
which might give it a little more credibility at our legislature.
Yeah.
I mean, if you tell me it was California and New York, it'd be a whole different thing.
Of course, yeah, so.
So board members, any comments or questions?
Yes, I have a comment, kind of a funny comment, actually. So this might be how we define enthusiastic pursuit of funding.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out.
So Tony, does that mean we have to change it now?
Well,
In all serious, Chair McCarthy, I do have a question. Maybe I missed it as Sandra was talking about things. The TRZ, does that require the TIF?
Yes, it does. It does.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
thank you, Tony. Any other comments? Anyway, it's always appreciated, at least by me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's move on to I, as in Indigo. And this is Metro Plan Happenings, Kate.
Yeah, there's a report with more information in it, but this is just our quick summary of some of the things that have been going on. It is National Week Without Driving. Maybe some of you have tried to do it for at least a day yet. It's hard to do, but give it a go. You've got a couple days left, and tag us if you try it. We would love that. The Rural Transportation Summit is coming up in 2 weeks. Vice Chair Vasquez is going to join us at that summit to advocate for those Greater Arizona Transportation Initiative projects, the RTAP projects at the summit. If anyone else is interested in attending, please let me know. It is a really good conference. It attracts a lot of state legislators. The AMPO conference, or the Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations, occurred last week. Both Dave and Sandra went to Cleveland and brought back a ton of great info. We heard about it this morning. There's lots for us to consider and pursue there. And then finally, we wanted to provide an update on any grants we had heard about. The city had applied for a CRISI grant, which is a rail infrastructure grant. It's part of the Downtown Mile project. They were trying to pay for Amtrak platform improvements that were not eligible in the award that they received, but were eligible under CRISI. They unfortunately did not receive that grant. However, the improvements are still required by BNSF, so they're still pursuing the project, just without the resources. I haven't heard if they intend to apply again next year. So other than that, I actually think we should hear about a couple of grants this month. We are anticipating hearing about Protect and potentially Safe Streets for All. So those should be big news, and fingers crossed. And that's all I have.
That's all you have. Well, let's move on to items from the board. I guess I'll start, and then I'll go to Geronimo. I went to the Transportation Board meeting yesterday, and we had an interesting discussion about the Butler upgrades. Discussions about should we put in a roundabout at Butler and Forest, or should we have a traditional intersection, and it was interesting that at least the Transportation Commission leaned more towards a traditional non-roundabout decision. That the bicycle and pedestrian committees have also discussed that, and I don't remember which, but at least one of them was more towards the roundabouts. So anyway, this will be coming to City Council, I think, next month or so. That was interesting. I guess that's all I have for now. Let's move on. Geronimo Vasquez, do you have any updates or questions or whatevers? Geronimo. Come back. Patrice Horstman.
I am here, and I don't have anything at this point to provide. I've been in Ireland for a week, so I'm still trying to land back in Flagstaff. So with that, I'm sorry, and I have nothing really further to add.
All right, my only comment is next time you go to Ireland, I want to go with you.
Jim, next time you should come with me.
Okay. Tony Williams.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I just want to recognize that last Friday, CCC had its presidential investiture for President Dr. Eric Heiser, and I'm proud to say that MetroPlan had representation there at that event, both during the day and that evening at the special event. Kate was able to attend, so thank you, Kate, for being there. And I know that evening, Vice Chair Vasquez, myself, and board member Miranda Sweet was in attendance at the special event that happened later that evening here at the college. And I just thought it was great to know that there is I want the board, everybody to know that MetroPlan was present and very much a part and very visible, if you will, at that event. So that's the update that I'd like to share.
All right, thank you, Tony. Jesse Thompson, do you have anything to bring up now?
Yes, I do. Most of you are aware that my term expired last December. The chairman of the board asked me to keep on until somebody from Coconino County was appointed to replace me. So far, I know there was an interest by Regina Silas, and also I believe there was somebody else that was mentioned from the city council. I have not heard anything. I don't know if they've already, the Board of Supervisors, Coconino County Supervisor, submitted any recommendation to the state. But anyway, that's the status of my replacement. And then thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I will note that I don't think he'd mind me saying this, that Charlie Odegaard also applied. And I think he would be good. I mean, he used to go to all of the state transportation board meetings, even when he didn't have to. So he showed real interest. Kate Morley, do you have any comments for the board?
Can I make a comment here real quickly and just given what Jesse's saying? I guess what we really need to do is take a little bit more proactive approach to try to get that position filled. I hear that there's a certain amount of frustration, and I certainly appreciate the fact that you've been willing, Jesse, to stay in there and help us during this transition time. But I also hear you saying you'd like us to find someone to fill the position. So maybe we need to work a little harder on that.
Yeah, actually, I asked the board if I was officially appointed to be there 6 month term expired. I was appointed by the governor. So, they told me there was nothing wrong with me continue until the board appoints somebody else or recommend that person to the governor for her appointment. So again, you know, I really appreciate being part of the board and will continue to work with you as long as I'm welcome, Jim.
Well, Jesse, we certainly support it. And as you know, I ask you to do what you're doing, and I do appreciate you responding. Thank you. Mr. Vasquez, I believe you,
Yeah,
have a comment?
Yeah, I do. I just wanted to also say that, you know, for the county representation, I'm kind of the point on transportation. And so now that I'm chair, this is back on priority lists. I do want to have it addressed. It just, over the last several months, as we've been going through, it's come up with the county, but we haven't put it a focus the way we need to. And we do need to be more proactive. And as chair and as someone involved in transportation as I am, I do intend to see this through and get this moved. So we are working on it, and we will be we'll be looking on it and reaching out further soon. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Does anyone else have any last minute comments? Well, I'll just say that on November 2nd, we're going to meet again. And going once, going twice, adjourn.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Appreciate you all being here today. Good meeting. And we got done in time.
Thank you. Have a great day.